I think we should always start with a 10-second dance party, don't you? Mostly so you can see me dancing in my in your video feed. And that's it. Okay. Hey everyone, this is Play Your Game with Alan Walker. I am here to talk a little bit about this really exciting event that we have going on Thursday at noon. So this Thursday, February 14th, 16th, at noon. Dan Nicholson, author of Rigging the Game, is going to be coming and speaking with us. And so I'm spending a few days just talking through what some of the concepts are in his book, so that if you have a chance to read it or if you have questions about it, you can kind of know what he's talking about. So what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about the 4 frames. So the 4 frames is a framework that you can work your decisions through. And what I mean by that is each of the 4 frames that I'm going to discuss today really have a set of questions to ask, and questions to ask about the specific situation that you're going through. So the reason that we have these in place is we've already talked about the certainty commandments. And just as a review, the certainty commandments are always closer versus more, delineate between preference and binary, acknowledge every decision has an infinite number of trade-offs, and bias asymmetry to the upside, or as I like to say, asymmetry to the upside. So the 4 frames are what you then go to and start to ask yourself these questions. The first one is called the parenting frame. So the parenting frame is really about how can I prevent bad things from happening, right? So in the book, Dan talks about his 2 young daughters and them getting access to something he doesn't want them to on the iPad, and how could he prevent that in the future, right? Because there's multiple ways of solving problems. There's preventative, which means that you are making sure that bad things can't happen. There's detective, which is after the fact, finding out that something bad happened and figuring out how to make sure it doesn't happen again. And so those are questions that you can ask yourself when you have a business decision, a real estate decision, a personal decision. It's about learning how you can set up a system to prevent the worst case scenario, so that the worst case scenario that's possible is something you can live with. Right. So those are a set of questions that you can ask yourself specifically around how can I prevent bad things from happening? Here's a great example. So I have a real estate deal that I'm looking at. And I always want to think through what's the worst case scenario here and how can I prevent that worst case scenario? So maybe the scenario is, well, I'm concerned that the market is going to be decreasing over the next 4 months. I'm doing a flip. My ARV, or after repair value, looks like this. And so I say, well, what am I concerned about? The worst case scenario is that the market continues to dip and I lose money on it. So what could I do? Well, before you buy the property, you could build that into your actual purchase price. So you could say, I'm concerned we might go down 5% in the next 6 months. I know that it's going to take me at least 3 to 4 months to get this on the market. So I'm going to buy this at 5% lower than I would normally buy it, because I want to make sure I've prevented a market dip from stealing my profitability, right? So that's an idea, or the concept of parenting frame. The second one is the commissioner frame. So this is really interesting, because this is about what if you owned a team and owned the league? What are the rules that you would create if you owned the team and owned the league, right? Because as business owners, we own our company, and that is kind of a game, right? Like we have to play the business game with our company. And so the question that we ask ourselves is, would I be willing to play by these rules in perpetuity? That means forever. And that is really, it doesn't mean you will play by these rules in perpetuity, but it does make you ask the question, am I willing to do this, right? If I'm looking at some commitment, some time commitment, maybe I'm being asked to be on a board or something along those lines. So then the question is, okay, well, I'm going to be losing X number of hours a month. Am I willing to do that forever? If the answer is no, then am I willing to do it for a certain amount of time? So it's constantly making your own rules. Like the concept behind play your own game is that you get to make up the rules for you. And there's a lot of people that say this is the exact way you're supposed to do it. But the reality is everybody has different priorities, different goals. And we all have to remember that we want to bias closer versus more, right? So I might say, you know what? I really don't have 2 hours a month for the next 6 months. So I'm going to say no to this, even though I'm being told that it would be great for visibility or whatever, right? But the commissioner frame is, well, what am I really trying to get to? What am I trying to achieve? And does this get me closer to that? So, and if you guys have any questions, I can't see the comments. So hold on, let me see if there are any. Nope, not yet. Okay, so the next one is the investor frame. So everybody, I think that knows me knows that I'm an investor. I love investing in real estate. I love investing in crypto. I love investing in businesses, right? So, so the question for the investor frame is, given what I know now, would I choose to opt into this particular situation? And a great example comes back to real estate, right? So I own 14 rental doors right now, and some of them I've just had because I bought them. They were a good deal at the time. Maybe they're performing well. Maybe they're kind of performing like okay. And the question is like, well, okay, if this property has $200,000 worth of equity in it, would I? If I had $200,000 of equity of cash, would I use that cash to buy that property? So then that really poses a different question, right? Because like it's about opportunity cost in my mind, right? It's about like, what else could you be doing with this money? And it's not even necessarily, could I be getting a much better return, but could I be getting something that gets me closer to what I want? Right. So given what I am now, would I choose to opt into this particular situation? For some reason, I keep thinking of like relationships too. Like I hope that you're not asking yourself this question about your spouse, but hey, if you are, live your life. So the next one is the professional skeptic frame. So the professional skeptic frame is really asking the question, why and can you prove it? I mean, how many times have you had a marketing campaign or some new way of doing things or some fancy whiz bang system that's going to solve everything, but you don't really have any data about it? You just believe it. And if you just believe it, it'll come true, right? Like it's the secret. So this is really about saying, well, can you actually prove what you're saying? If you can't prove what you're saying, how could you prove what you're saying? Right? So like, hey, I don't know if this marketing campaign is going to work, but if I were to do it for say 3 months and gather some data, then I can determine whether or not I want to do it more. Am I willing to spend the money on whatever 3 months of the marketing campaign is before I actually commit that this actually is a way to go forward? So these are the 4 frames. Again, the whole great thing about this book, Rigging the Game, is that it's about playing your own game. It's about the questions that you should ask yourself. And the vast majority of decisions we make are not binary, right? The vast decision of the choices we make are preference-based. They really come down to what you want. And that's where the power comes in. If you know what you want and you know who you are, then you can move forward and do what you want to without worrying about what everyone around you is thinking. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have that same issue all the time, right? But it's a constant thing to work on that for me, I found a lot of peace in my life around like, okay, I get to make my own decisions. I don't have to follow somebody's 10-step marketing plan or some guru's system to do X, right? I don't have to do any of that. What I have to do is figure out what makes me me, play my own game. And that's what I hope that you read this book for, because you can learn to do the same thing. So again, Rigging the Game this Thursday, February 16th at noon. We're going to have the author, Dan Nicholson from playing Rigging the Game, come on to our show, and we're going to be able to have time for some questions. If you have questions, please tune in, and I will see you soon. Bye. Oh, I should have an outro.